So let me ask you two questions. First, do you think everyone is a good person? Or are some people selfish and cruel and unkind? And then the second question, do you want to be a good person? Or are you okay being a person who's selfish and cruel and unkind? I think some people are good and some people are less good. They struggle with goodness. And I want to be a good person. I want to try and be a better person. I'm guessing you do too. So the question is, how do we do that? How do you become a good person? Is there a set of rules we can follow? Is it just trial and error? Do you learn from experience? Are there skills that you can practice or develop? Now, it turns out people have been asking these questions for as long as there have been humans. And some of the best answers to these questions come from people who wrote thousands of years ago. I'm a professor in a great books program, so it's my job to study this stuff. I've been studying it for decades, literally about 20 years. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that I've learned from ancient writers about how to be a good person. We're going to talk about 3 ancient writers. I'm going to share with you what I've learned from them. So watch this video, and I think you'll learn how to be a better version of yourself. So a lot of discussions about goodness, about self-improvement, a lot of these discussions start with Plato. Now, why is that? It's because Plato, in most of his works, is very interested in human virtue, which is another way of saying human excellence. Plato was really interested in pinning down the qualities, the characteristics, and the actions that make us good people. Now, and some of you may know this, Plato wrote dialogues. This is a particular form of philosophy. It's really almost like a work of literature. And in these dialogues, Plato would have characters debate. They would argue about things like good and bad or justice and injustice. Most of Plato's dialogues feature this guy, Socrates. You've probably heard of Socrates. He was Plato's teacher. He was a very famous philosopher who really did live in Athens. And he was executed in Athens essentially for practicing philosophy. He was killed for asking too many questions. So Socrates is a real guy, and Plato turns his teacher into this character in his dialogues, and he has debates with people about what it means to be a good person, what it means to be an excellent human being. One of the ideas that Plato consistently emphasizes across his dialogues, and maybe this would be a bit controversial, but the idea is you are not your body. This is something that Plato believed, that a human being is not simply a body. One of the ways that Socrates describes this, he says, look, no, you are a person. You have a body. A body is like this thing that you carry around. So what does this mean, and why does it matter? I think now, and it was probably the case thousands of years ago too, people care a lot about their bodies. And when we talk about self-improvement, when we talk about making ourselves better, we often focus on physical things, right? We're often talking about like fitness and morning routines and beauty regimes and those kinds of things. We're talking about our body. And when we're not talking about that, we're often talking about material things. We're talking about money and possessions and stuff and like the things we want to accumulate and acquire. So when we think about making our lives better, we're often thinking about that stuff, bodies, material things. And this is true now. It seems to have been true in ancient Athens as well. And Plato's Socrates consistently says we don't think enough about spiritual improvement, about improving our souls. Think about love. If someone only loves you for your body, do they really love you? If someone only loves you for your money, do they really love you? I think our answer to those questions is obviously not. Like we talk about that all the time, right? Like if love is just physical, if it's just about money, that's not real love. And Socrates says, yes, the reason is because it points to something about you that is more fundamental, more essential to who you are than your body or your bank account. The lesson might be material things matter less than we think. Material things aren't the only things that matter. They might not even be the most important things. Socrates poses this question directly to a young guy in one of Plato's dialogues called the Alcibiades. This guy Alcibiades, he asks him, wouldn't someone who loves your body go off and leave you when your beauty is no longer in full bloom? But someone who loves your soul will not leave you as long as you're making progress. What Socrates and it seems Plato is trying to say is that if someone really loves you, what they love is not just your body, it's your soul that they love. So in a way, for Plato, I think the first step to becoming better, to becoming a good person, is recognizing that you are more than just a body. You're more than just a body. And coming to understand the part of yourself that is really most valuable and most important and requires the most attention. What part of yourself is worth investing in? So this leads us to the next ancient thinker of the group, maybe the heaviest of heavyweights, and that's Aristotle. Aristotle was one of Plato's students, and he developed Plato's thoughts in lots of ways that are really useful for us, especially in his very famous book, the Nicomachean Ethics. This is it here. This is a very dog-eared copy of the There's a lot of notes in there, a lot of marginalia. Aristotle gives us more specific advice, I think, on how we can improve that soul part of ourselves. We might summarize this advice as focusing on higher goods. So let me explain. Aristotle says every human activity, every endeavor, every enterprise, every industry, all the things we do as humans aims at some good. We're always trying to achieve something we believe to be good. Carpentry, you're trying to build a house, that's good. Or you're trying to build a table, that's good. You're baking, you're trying to make delicious food. Medicine, you're trying to heal bodies. You're always aiming at something that is good, right? Some human good. Now this part sometimes upsets people. Aristotle argues that some goods, some of the things we pursue, are better than other things. So he says, like, theoretically, we could come up with like a ranked list of the goods we are pursuing. And sometimes people get mad because they say, oh, well, who's he to say which, that comfortable shoes are better than cupcakes or whatever, right? But in a basic, simple way, I think it's just obviously true, right? Just think about this. Like, chocolate chip cookies are delicious. Indisputable fact. Chocolate chip cookies are good. But education is also good. It is good for people to be educated. It's very advantageous for people to be educated. Now, if you could offer a child a chocolate chip cookie or a good education, which of those things is better and more important for that child? So, like, education is obviously better, more important than cookies. Like, they're both good. Everybody loves cookies. Everybody likes education. This is a weird example, but education better than cookies. You could write that down in your notes. So how does this insight help us become better people? I think essentially Aristotle gives us a kind of framework for decision making. He clarifies for us that some things matter more than other things. They matter to us and they matter to other people. And that helps us to think about how we spend our time, right? What should we spend our time doing? We ought to dedicate ourselves, it would seem, to those higher goods that will benefit us, that will really improve our lives or improve the lives of others, and spend less time on these lesser goods. Doesn't mean that like the lesser goods like cookies are bad. Obviously not. Cookies are great. But it does help you kind of properly rate the importance of cookies in your life. Is the the cookie example might be backfiring. Think about a young person. You may be thinking about the goods of like popularity versus real friendship. What ought I be spending my time developing? Working on my popularity or, developing my friendships? You might be thinking as most adults, if you've got family, well, what's more important, money or family time? What should I dedicate myself to? And I grant these, in many cases, these are complicated decisions, right? Because, a stable income does also benefit my family. Making these decisions, they're not all as easy as cookie v education, right? It's not always as clear. But Aristotle does provide us with a kind of framework where we can think about, where we're able to kind of clearly work out, okay, well, how important are these various goods in my life? What benefits do they provide to me and do they provide to the world? And once you've thought that through, it gives you a kind of direction. It informs your actions. Most people obviously care about doing the right thing. The internet is, interestingly, when you think about it, is just full of people talking about good and bad behavior.
You're not a girl's girl. You're not, okay? I see it too much. I'm like, you are mean. You are mean to other girls.
Yeah, what makes someone a cool kid?
Being kind, being a gentleman, respecting people.
I try to be a good dad. I feel like I make more of an effort than my father.
Am I the asshole for kicking my wife out after she punched my mom in the face?
Most of us want to do the right thing, but it's hard to figure out what the right thing is. The amazing thing I find is that this has always been the case. It's always been hard to figure this out. At one point, for example, Aristotle says, it is hard work to be excellent. What he means is figuring out the right course of action in any life on any given day is extremely complicated. And boy, is that true. But when you hear someone say this thousands of years ago, I find this weirdly comforting. There's something about the fact that we struggle with things that people thousands of years ago struggled with. That we're all the same, right? We're humans, and we've always had these human problems. But the nice thing is that they've been through this, and there's like wisdom has been developed over time. Like people have thought through these problems and developed strategies for dealing with them. And then we can benefit from that wisdom, from the wisdom of past generations. We can make use of that knowledge to help us navigate our very complicated world. So on that note, let's turn to our final thinker, Cicero. Now, there's a perceptible shift when we move from the Greeks to the Romans. I think you can feel it. The Romans just cared more about public life. The Greeks were very interested in you and your soul and the metaphysical and the gods. And the Romans were, generally speaking, more invested in the community, in the state, in the public. It's not that the Greeks ignored this, but this I think is really the primary focus for the Romans. They're very focused on this idea that being a human means living in a community with other humans. That's our condition. We live together. So living well and being a good person means learning how to live as a member of a community. And in his work on duties, Cicero provides us with a ton of advice on how to live as part of a community, how to contribute to a community. And I think one way to summarize Cicero's central insight is we could just say, give as much as you take. Or maybe it should even be give more than you take. The way that Cicero talks about human beings is actually quite beautiful. He says, first, that we have this kind of basic fellowship with other human beings because of our shared humanity. And then within that human fellowship, he says there are other smaller fellowship groups. So family, we have duties and obligations to our families. And then friendships, he says we have duties to our friends, fellowship with our friends. And then because he's Roman, he says, maybe most noble of all is the fellowship of the state. Remember, he's Roman, right? Public spirit. That's that's the idea. So the state is also this extraordinary fellowship. One of the things I think that's so useful about Cicero is the way he talks about human beings. As individuals, we are only small parts of something much, much larger than ourselves, the various groups that are bigger than us. And from that perspective, being a good person is about the ways that you support and contribute to those larger groups, those larger fellowships. How do you contribute to your family? How do you foster your friendships and benefit your friends? How do you make your community, your political community, a better place? When everything's working properly, we derive benefits from these things, right? Our friends do good things for us. How do we respond by doing good things for them? A healthy family looks out for the good of each member. So how do the individuals contribute to the good of the family? There's one passage from this work that's really stayed with me. We do not hesitate to perform dutiful services for those whom we hope will assist us in the future. What then ought we to be like towards those who have already assisted us? There are two aspects of liberality. First, granting a kind service, and secondly, returning it. Whether we grant one or not is up to us. A good man, however, is not permitted to fail to return one, provided, of course, that he can do so without injustice. So it's important to pay your debts, right? The way Cicero talks about this, he says we often think, I'm going to be kind to this person. I'm going to do them a favor because I think it might benefit me in the future. But Cicero says it's even more important to repay those people who have already benefited you, right? People who've done something for you. It's essential that you pay those people back. And for him, I think that service, that reciprocal service, is the stuff that holds community together. We can find in these books lessons and insights that help us live a better life. The modern world can be challenging, even depressing. If you want to think about how to live a meaningful life, how to combat despair, you can watch this video over here. It's a video about that, about 3 writers who help us fight despair. So click the link. I'll see you over there, and I'll talk to you soon.